So this is part two of the day's Khoodeelaar television channel broadcast. This is part two at 0550 GMT on Monday, the 17th of October 2022. The latest updates, of course, from Pakistan contain the news that Imran Khan has won 6 of the 7 Pakistan National Assembly seats that he contested on Sunday's election, or what they're called in Pakistan by-election, by-polls. They're called by-elections in the UK, but by-polls in Pakistan. And the other bit, which is quite interesting, literally interesting, because it has been reported that Jemima Khan, Imran Khan's first wife, and the mother, as she would prefer to call it, the mother of his or their 2 sons, was seen riding a bike past the offices or office of Nawaz Sharif in London. Now, this is, according to our initial observation, this is something that can only be done by Jemima Khan. I mean, she is known for staging little stunts. For example, she staged a little stunt when George Galloway was MP in Bradford West, and she staged the stunt before that as being editor for a day or two for the New SS, the New Statesman, so called. And on their behalf, allegedly, she went to, or she talked to George Galloway. And one of the main revelations she published, attributing this to Jack Galloway, that he actually effectively said words to the effect that he was a Muslim. Now, Galloway, so far as we can recall, has resisted very strongly this particular question. Many people have asked him, or many people have wondered whether he, quote, became a Muslim. But Galloway has remained quite firm in hiding the truth from public. Now, the bike ride is like a teenager. I mean, the teenaged Jemima Khan could be expected to do the bike ride. But the fact that she has done this when she is not a teenager anymore shows that she is still in the mind and mentally a teenager, because she must be feeling quite curious about what is happening in Pakistan, especially after a comment shortly after the divorce or separation from Imran Khan, that she found it quite strange. Well, I'm not quoting her, I'm interpreting her, paraphrasing her. When she went to Pakistan after the marriage with Imran Khan, she found the culture too black and white for her tastes or for her experience. I think over the years, and especially in the last few months, she must have changed her mind, especially based on the news that Imran Khan has been making a serious inroads into the consciousness of the Pakistani population. Whatever the ultimate kind of outcome is of this campaign now, we acknowledge without any hesitation the fact that Imran Khan has made a contribution that is worth remembering and noting, and it can only produce positive consequences for the people of Pakistan, for the future of Pakistan and the future of the subcontinent, in fact, for the future of the world, especially as this by election came after the stupid, idiotic, ignorant, factually incorrect comment about Pakistan's nuclear regime made by the idiot Joe Biden. What Joe Biden, in our view, has done is to confirm everything that the Imran Khan party has said and Imran Khan himself has said about foreign interference and the gulami and the slavish mentality of the local kind of regime in Pakistan, servile to the interfering dictates of the USA. And the shameful response by one of the Pakistani senior officials or government post holders to a lowly diplomat from the USA asking for the regime change in Pakistan outrageous. What this shows is that globally, the CIA's operation, the CIA is not the only secret sabotaging operation operating under the Pentagon or the USA state. There are other operations as well, various agencies. They are constantly engaged in undermining and sabotaging what is freely, objectively definable as democratic exercises and behavior on the part of the local peoples in the country across the globe. And as we have said before, the definitive account of the CIA's activities published by Philip A.G., who is no longer around, but Philip A.G. was a CIA operative, and he focused on the CIA's activities in Nicaragua in Southern America. And that was the template, if you like. Many other disclosures have come about the CIA's operations and motives. The point is that when Biden made the stupid remark, it created legitimately made responses by Tehreek Insaf Party as well as Imran Khan himself. And that series of responses meant that various weaknesses, serious, lethal weaknesses in the USA's own arsenal of nuclear arsenals and the various accidents that have been happening in the USA's nuclear arsenals and weaponry have been noted by the Pakistani response, which is absolutely brilliant. Because usually you would think that the American president's comments would be dealt with similar force by an equally big power state. Pakistan is not a big power state, despite the fact that it has the nuclear weapon. Pakistan is not comparable to the Soviet, ex-Soviet Union, now Russia, of course, nor even with France or in the UK in terms of the arsenal. France, UK, China, Russia, these are big possessors of huge nuclear arsenals or weapons. Even India, next door to Pakistan, has got bigger stockpiles of nuclear weapons and armaments. The nuclear weapons pose a threat to the whole of the planet, not just the whole of the planet, to other planets nearby. Once they finish the planet Earth, they will completely finish many of the other planets that come into contact with their atmosphere. So, nuclear weapons are a bad thing, and they must be decommissioned throughout the world, not just in one country, not just in one region, but everywhere, totally honestly. All the owner countries, the owner regimes must destroy, safely destroy, securely destroy all the nuclear weapons. That is the main aim and objective. In the case of the UK, from where this broadcast is coming, the campaign for nuclear disarmament is almost now silent. And the silence is due to the fact that the Labour Party politically has been murdered by the likes of Keir Starmer, the likes of Tony Blair. And despite the fact that he has made contrary kind of impressions and pretensions, Gordon Brown has been a corrupt, dishonest individual who has not made a stand against the far right, warmongering, deadly policies that Tony Blair pursued. And Gordon Brown keeps coming and poking around little things, politics. But he does not make any serious stance, as he did not make any serious stance during all these years that Tony Blair was sucking up to George W. Bush and carrying on the massacres in Afghanistan and in Iraq for years. So the Labour Party politically has been murdered by Keir Starmer. But even before Keir Starmer began to politically murder, it was being killed politically. It was being made nearly dead by the assaults on the founding values and principles and the actually essential values of the Labour Party associated with Keir Hardie. So we shall be talking more about all of these. And going back to Pakistan, I think that the mission that Imran Khan is embarked on must continue democratically, because this is an enlightening movement for not just for the subcontinent. It must be a positive, a positive movement for India as well. India is not a Hindu country in terms of the population. Hindu majority, yes, but 16-17% of the population in India are Muslim. Now think about that, 16 or 17% of nearly 1.5 billion people, 1.25 billion people is a lot of people, lot of the Western European countries together. So that must be taken into account. So if India is a mixed race, mixed faith country, then the impact of what is happening in Pakistan currently with the initiative of Imran Khan. Now, the American interference has backfired. The regime changes actually totally backfired, because regime changes done by the Americans usually numb and nullify and silence their victims and target, who are ousted from power. This time, Imran Khan and Tehreek Insaf Party have not only rebounded, but they have become increasingly stronger by the day, by the rally, by the jalsa, by the speech, by the evidence, by the reiteration of the resolve of the founding principle and purpose of Pakistan. Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah. And he's going back, Imran Khan's going back, repeatedly going back, briefly, for obvious reasons, to the basic tenets, basic teachings of the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be on him. I mean, these have had nothing but absolutely positive kind of benefits in terms of the response of the people of Pakistan, majority of the people of Pakistan, where there are 2% plus are Hindus, but the majority are Muslims. And the Pakistan should pave the way. What has been overdue for 75 years, since August 1947, both in Pakistan and also in India, is now beginning to happen. And Imran Khan and the PTI must be supported in principle from across the world to continue the battle, because what happened is the Arab Spring withered away because of the kind of fragmentation of the Arabic countries, Arabic speaking countries, and the interference and the domination of the anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic elements in the areas like Egypt. So what Imran Khan is doing should reach other Muslim countries, including the likes of Iran and Turkey. And Iran has to follow in the democratic tradition that is being created belatedly, but being created now after 75 years of Pakistan. And Iran should learn the lesson that suppressing legitimate protests and suppressing women's rights, especially, is not Islamic. That cannot be Islamic, no way. And Iran should make a distinction between what is Islamic correctly and what is pragmatic and what is universally acceptable and what is universally consistent with the teachings of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, and his four followers and his other followers. And Imran Khan has referred to Afghanistan, the tradition of Afghanistan, which is unique in resisting, rebuffing, and beating repeated, successive invasions from the West and other colonialists. This is something that is a positive resource. So, what Imran Khan is doing internally in Tehreek Insaf and also internally in Pakistan must be expanded in the most universal sense of the term, not in an invasive, aggressive, or denying the truth way. It should be embracing the whole of humanity. And what he said previously in many of his jalsas, that the people of Indonesia, what is to Malaysia, Indonesia, accepted Islam not because of the badness or the attacking powers or force or aggression among the newly arriving Muslims, but because of the strength of the character, the beauty and the best aspects of the character as human beings. Muslims become the best human beings as well. And that should be the counter to the Hindutva venom and poison that is dominant in the current regime that is fronted by Narendra Modi, the criminal. And this is something that should be continued, and we shall be continuing with this. Now, back to the United Kingdom and the tottering regime of the Conservative Party in power. Is it in power? We have called Liz Truss. When she first came on, we called her Liz Truss based on her previous record. But since she has been in number 10 Downing Street, we find that she is least trusted. So phonetically, there is a similarity in the sounds. Least trusted and Liz Truss. Very similar sounds, the two phrases. Least trusted and Liz Truss. So Liz Truss is least trusted. Now, today's headlines in the Fleet Street papers, which are forced to tell the truth, at least some of it, is include the headlines that she's going to be ousted this week, or at least we interpret all of that as meaning that arrangements will be made with the denier, Graham Brady, that proceedings or processes should be put in place so that members of parliament, conservative members of parliament, can file in their letter of no confidence in each one. And those can be treated as enough to constitute grounds for her to go and the replacement to be kind of processed in. We shall be talking more about that in due course later. Now, back to Tower Hamlets and the question of the Shamima Begum and her friends being trafficked by the Canadian spy and the subsequent cover up of that trafficking of Shamima Begum and her friends by the United Kingdom security services, two of the security services, because the UK has more than just MI5 and MI6, but those are so secret that they don't disclose their names. The main headquarters, GCHQ, is not the only headquarters. There are other spying headquarters as well. Now, the point is that despite all of this evidence now coming out, The Supreme Court has not yet revoked its own decision and withdrawn its decision, which was to refuse the appeal, refuse the appeal court decision, which was to let Shamima Begum come to the UK to challenge the then Home Secretary's ruling, which is Sajid Javid. We started calling him Stupid Javid even before he made that stupid, un, kind of unquestionably stupid decision to withdraw Shamima Begum's British by birth nationality. For a Pakistani origin individual to do that completes completes his description as a mental slave, as a nephew Tom, and as anything else in that range. Now, today's Liz Truss publicity has got a little thing about Sajid Javid. Sajid Javid said that he refused to take on the Liz Truss offer after Kwarteng was ousted to become Chancellor of the Exchequer because he made conditions and Liz Truss refused to accept those conditions. But Liz Truss has now retaliated by releasing this alleged information that Sajid Javid was rejected or not offered the job of Chancellor because he was shit at his previous cabinet jobs. Now, that cannot be true because Sajid Javid has been given several cabinet posts in the course of the last 10 years. So he was not shit. He could not have been shit. If he were shit, he would not have been given a second cabinet job after the first one, after he lost the first one or he was ousted from the first one. Sajid Javid was the target of a vilification program campaign by Dominic Cummings because Dominic Cummings was the one who insulted Sajid Javid's Asian, Pakistan origin political aid. She may be Pakistan origin and she may be a victim, which is factually true because she was marched out of the office and she was insulted in a public way by Dominic Cummings. But politically looking at her actual role and her mentality, she is a mental slave. Her whole outlook is complicit with the attitude, the cultural attitude of the racists and anti-Pakistanis, culturally anti-Pakistanis in the sense of anti-Muslim, not anti-Pakistani just as a country. They would be anti-Muslim as anti-Bangladeshi Muslim, anti-Indonesian Muslims, anti-Malaysian Muslims, and so on. So Sajid Javid is a dishonest individual. We have no hesitation in saying that. Not only is he dishonest in the ordinary sense of the term, but he is dishonest in a case evidence kind of way. Let's go to Argentina for a case example. Argentina had a Muslim of either Syrian or Iraqi origin, but the idiot changed his so-called religion to Christianity in order to cling on to power. They kicked him out. So Sajid Javid says that he's not a practicing Muslim. What the fuck? Why should the moron say that he's not a practicing Muslim if he's not a complete and utter idiot? So therefore he's an idiot, despite the fact that he has or has not been given or offered a job by Truss. He's an idiot. So we said to him, about him, in 2017, I think, we said he was stupid, Javid. Why? Because he said that he was not a Uncle Tom. He said that the left were calling him Uncle Tom and he objected to that. He's a liar. We called him Uncle Tom and worse. And he didn't complain about any Asian Muslim activist or campaign calling him Uncle Tom. We called him Uncle Tom and we are still calling him Uncle Tom. Shame on you, idiot Sajid, stupid Jabid. Now, stupid Jabid cannot be a leader of the conservative or any party because he has no morality, he has no honesty, and he has no integrity. He's opportunistic and he is kind of trickling down. I mean, he's kind of rationing the disclosures about his being discriminated against. It's like Nusrat Ghani. Remember the conservative minister? They told her to her face that she was a Muslim, so she would be discriminated against. That she still does not. She still does not condemn the conservatives. She does not leave them. And there is another moron from Kashmiri background as well. I mean, this moron is called Rahman Chishti. Now, Rahman and Rahman are two different words in Arabic. And Rahman is a satanic word or kind of satanic. So, anyone who calls himself Rahman must be worth condemning. I mean, Rahman Chishti stood as a candidate for the conservative leadership. He didn't get a single nomination. Shouldn't that tell him how complete is the racist, anti-Muslim composition and constitution of the Conservative Party that has been fronted by the congenital anti-Muslim liar Boris Johnson and the anti-Muslim liar, call me Dave Cameron, the cunt. These are reprehensible people that are not worth being shat on. And they are leaders of this country. Where is the country now? It's a devil's land. It's the land of darkness and evil. Because there is no morality, there is no ethics, no principle. And the campaign, they carried out a campaign for 4 years of vilification against a most innocent baby angel Geronimo. What kind of humans are these? What kind of values do they have? Most innocent, perfectly healthy baby angel Geronimo was targeted for vilification over 4 years by the UK Central Government Department, DEFRA. There was no evidence. There is still no evidence. There will never be any evidence that baby angel Geronimo has ever been unwell, in ill health whatsoever. Baby angel Geronimo has been one of the world's best in health creatures, and they condemned him. And reason why they condemned him was not because the facts justified his being in any way slighted, let alone being condemned, but because they wanted to make a case, they wanted to create a precedent so that they could evade having to pay farmers and owners of other animals, whose animals they would illegally destroy, unlawfully destroy, under pretext of those animals being unwell. That is how corrupt and evil the regime has been. So, as in the Surah Al Isra, the dialogue between God and Satan is summarized as follows: that Satan, who refused to bow to the humans that God created, was told by God that, okay, you go and have the option of misleading people, leading people astray, in other words, deluding them. And those who are God fearing, loyal to God, will follow God, and the majority of human beings will follow God. So the deluded ones have taken over the UK's government agencies, and the shaitan is in the form of the personification of, or personified by, likes of Boris Johnson, the congenital liar. Now, the congenital liar bit was identified in Boris Johnson's behavior, which was studied over a considerable length of time by this woman, who was the ambassador for France in the UK until 2017. Was it 2017? We shall check and update on that accordingly. Now, Sylvia Barman, so she wrote extensively about Boris Johnson's congenital lying. She could not have done that without finding undeniable, irrefutable consistency or persistence in the evidence of Boris Johnson being a congenital liar, dishonest, corrupt, depraved. So she told the Times newspaper that Boris Johnson was a congenital liar, of course. And we shall see let's go and see if we can find this item, which is absolutely fascinating. Sylvia Barman is a linguist, I think, and she is an interesting woman. She's an intelligent person to come across. Sylvie Barman. Okay. So this is the one in the Guardian. Let's check the ones that are there. Okay, the interview with her by John Henley, dated Friday, the 26th of February 2021, is headed Lying is no longer a sin. A former French ambassador on Brexit and Boris Johnson, John Henley in Paris. Exclusive. Sylvie Barman, who has written book in attempt to understand Brexit, says question of Britain's identity was key. Now, we shall update on that one because that was in 2021. Now, 2 days ago, the Telegraph Telegraph website, published an item by one of the writers or contributors admitting that the Brexiteers claim that those who wanted the UK to remain a member of the European Union were running a propaganda called Project Fear, meaning that those who opposed Brexit did so by spreading fear among people so that people would not take the risk, let's say, of voting for Brexit. Now they say that that was true, that they lied, that the Brexiteers lied by accusing anti-Brexiteers of spreading Project Fear. So this one is actually not covering that one because that revelation came only 2 days ago. And this article was Friday, the 26th of February 2021 by John Henley. So let's see what the body of the piece says. And we shall quote from the Times version that was published the day after, I think, the 27th of February. Okay. So let's see For a woman who fell in love with Britain on her first visit, that's how it starts, to Brighton to learn English as a schoolgirl, sometime in the mid-1960s, and whose best friends have lived in London for more than 30 years. Brexit is also a matter of personal sadness. When you have admired a country for a long time, appreciated its humor, tolerance, courtesy, openness, of course it is sad, she says. It also means now there is no more jelly or Stilton in Marks and Spencer's in Marsh and German, and that's Brexit too. First and foremost, though, was the shock No one thought it would happen, not even the Brexiteers, Barman says. David Cameron told me several times there was no way he could lose. He just wanted to solve his problem with his Eurosceptics. At endless embassy lunches and receptions, she says, she was assured by all that the Brexit are pragmatic, the British are pragmatic, we just won't do this. One very senior Brexiteer told us, we are not leaving and we will keep annoying you. Are you sure you want us to stay? Now, that is how she gives the interview to this John Hanley and the Guardian. And she's, of course, speaking in France, not in the UK, because that's 2 years, 3 years after she left. London was, she says, a city of extraordinary dynamism and optimism. French cabinet ministers were queuing up to visit, one after the other, all searching for Britain's recipe for success. It was an astonishing place. Now, Barman says, in an interview in her flat on Paris's left bank, lined with the souvenirs of 40 years in France's diplomatic service, it feels like I have lived through a revolution. To see all of that blown up, deliberately for what? A blind belief in some mythical idea. How did it happen? To answer the question, the now retired career diplomat who has worked in Hong Kong, New York, Brussels, and Moscow, and was France's ambassador to Beijing before she moved to Britain, has written a book that pulls no punches. Goodbye Britannia, published this month in France, calls Boris Johnson an inveterate liar, describes Brexit as the triumph of emotion over reason, and suggests its roots lie in a combination of deluded British exceptionalism and rank political opportunism. Let's go back to this word, deluded. This is this is a part of the interpretation of the Quran, Al Surah. The God said to Satan that only the deluded will follow you. So I said earlier before I started this item that Boris Johnson is the personification of Satan as described in advance in the Holy Quran as a Satan's deluded followers. For a woman who fell in love with Britain on her first visit to Britain, etc., etc., it goes on, yeah? So, of course, right up until referendum night, Bahman says, the story was the same. I went to the party hosted by Roland Drudd from this Stronger in campaign. George Osborne came by at about 11 p.m. and everyone congratulated each other. People were sure. Barman went back to the French residence on Kensington Palace Gardens, got a couple of hours sleep, then went downstairs at about 5 a.m. to watch the final results with her staff. It was, she says, a bombshell. I wanted to analyze the reasons. Barman blames a toxic mix of largely concocted fears over immigration. We shall come to the immigration thing as part of the satanic influence. Populist politicians willing to exploit them, and an identity crisis by which a nation that not so long ago ruled the waves somehow convinced itself it was in a dictatorship. The question of Britain's identity was key, she says. It's very strange. On the one hand, the British say, we are the best. We hold all the cards. We will divide and rule as we always have. And on the other, we are a vassal state to Brussels. Now, this is a piece by this John Henley on The Guardian. And The Guardian is stupid, as is John Henley, because although he's apparently accurately kind of paraphrasing and reporting and quoting Sylvie Berman. He is hiding the biggest, the biggest lie that was foisted on the public, the voting public, by the congenital liar Boris Johnson, who created the fear that Muslims from Turkey would take over the country if Britain didn't leave the European Union. That was the thing, the fear of Muslims. Immigration doesn't cover anywhere near the horror that they create in the minds of people that hordes of Muslims are going to come and take over this country. And Boris Johnson said that millions of Turks would be unstoppable. They could not be stopped from taking over Britain if Britain didn't leave the European Union. So, although the Telegraph has published one aspect of the lie, which is that Project Fear was a phrase created by Brexiteers to actually condemn into silence the anti-Brexiteers. The reality is that it wasn't Project Fear. It has to be completed. That sentence is not completed or complete. Project Fear of Muslims, by invented by the anti-Muslim Brexiteers and led by the congenital liar, the personifications of Satan, Boris Johnson, who confected the lie that millions of Turks would take over the country. Now, the facts, as I have asserted and as the facts are, Turkey is not going to become a member of the European Union for a host of reasons for a very long time. And it wasn't likely to be even considered eligible for membership of the European Union. And it is not. So why did the liar Boris Johnson say that Turkey was going to take over? The Turks are going to take over the UK? The Turks, not any other nation or state, not any other European kind of country or its people. The fear was directed at the image of the Turks. So Sylvie Berman has said, well, we'll read from her book another time, but that is one. I'm not going to read the rest of the Guardian piece because, as I said, the Guardian piece written by this John Hanley, they complement each other. He's an idiot. And he's hiding the truth about anti-Muslim centra of the Brexiteers' lying campaign. So this is the piece on the Times website. The Sylvie Berman interview was kind of, she gave the interview. Let me go to the accessible browser and let's see where we can see the full quotations. So Sylvie is spelled Sylvie, and Barman is B for Bertie, ERMANN. So Sylvie Berman is quoted in the Times headline on the Saturday. It's a Saturday interview, and it is headed Sylvie Berman. Yes, Boris is a congenital liar, and your country has decided to scuttle itself. Now, scuttle itself, I've discussed before, is a very colloquial word or phrase. And Sylvie Berman obviously managed to learn her English thoroughly because she fell in love with England. And that's where the sadness is deeper. She was criticized this week for her verdict on the Prime Minister, but France's former ambassador remains unsparing and unrepentant. Charles Bremner writes. Now, Charles Bremner, like the Guardian's John Henley, writes from Paris, France, because he went to see her the same week. Sylvie Barman, there is a caption to her picture, says she did not mean to be deliberately provocative in her assessment of the United Kingdom decision to leave the EU, adding she was simply stating a fact. So this picture of Sylvie Barman is by Ben Gar, G-U-R-R, for the Times. So Charles Bremner, Saturday, 27th of February 2021. So he writes his first paragraph. It's not every day that the ambassador of one of Britain's closest allies, note the word allies, calls the Prime Minister a congenital liar. Sylvie Barman, who was until 2017, so it's correct, I said 2017, France's envoy at the court of St. James's, is amused by the fuss in London over her portrait of Boris Johnson as a clever but reckless opportunist with no regard for the truth. Johnson, she wrote in her new book, Goodbye Britannia, lies to embellish reality, lies as a game, but also as an instrument of power. A shower of Brexiteer wrath has been lobbed back across the channel this week. I have come in for the usual stuff. Without us, you'd still be under the Third Reich and so on. Barman says, talking in her flat on the Paris left bank, I didn't mean that to be provocative. It's just a factual description. Johnson, that is, he built his career on lying. Now, this is exactly what is predicted in the Quran about Satan, deluding his followers or his leading his deluded followers. And Boris Johnson completely personifies the deluded Satan's followers, both in this Brexit lying and also in his collusion with the harassment, that has gone on for 4 years of the most innocent creature on earth, baby angel Geronimo. Demonization, harassment, targeting. She's a, as I said before, Sylvie Berman is an accomplished linguist, and she has been studying the local cultures in most of the countries she has been posted in on behalf of France. She has been studying on her own behalf. Her postings have been on behalf of France. Now, I'll come to the Project Fear thing in the confession in the formerly Boris Johnson graph. otherwise known as the Telegraph Group. So what the liars in the Conservative Party have been doing, always doing, is the same thing that Boris Johnson has been allowed to do, because when he was being imposed as the corrupt Norman Smith on the BBC television, used to creepily say he's a winner. He is not shit winner. He's a shit. He has won nothing but disaster for this country. And where is the fucking Norman on the fucking BBC? There is no sign of the shit. Let's look at this lying. Project Fear. That's what we are looking at. So the Telegraph is a piece written by a man called Jeremy Warner. It's on the 15th of October, so that is only 2 days ago. And its heading is Project Fear was right all along. 6 years of policy confusion and ineptitude has brought a calamitous loss of standing. What he's saying is that 6 years after the 2016 referendum that established Brexit as an outcome of the referendum, Britain international standing has deteriorated by the day. That's what is happening. The Project Fear was right all along. And this has been now kind of interpreted by others, like the London Economic website. It says, Telegraph admits Project Fear was right all along. Let's see this one. Downbeat prediction on the economic consequences of leaving the European Union have turned out to be overwhelmingly correct, Jeremy Warner said. This is an interpretation from there by the London Economic, and the byline is given to Jack Peat, and it is dated the 16th of October, that is yesterday. So there are various permutations of the same kind of admission by Jeremy Warner in the Telegraph. And it's not just the London Economic, all the other outlets have. So Telegraph Company, the tweet says, Project Fear was right all along. 6 years of policy confusion and inaptitude has brought a calamitous loss of standing. The UK government had lost all vestiges of credibility in politics, finance, and economics. With Liz Truss's time as PM likely to be short-lived, reaction to his surprising admission has been quick to flood in. So many people have responded to the Jeremy Warner piece. Of course, they have, and they will do. And it's not. And this is the biggest ever poll of polls, which says that Boris Johnson deeply regrets going down Brexit route. I mean, that is what. And this is a shit called Frost. The shit called Frost has become a self-appointed expert on the Irish kind of aspect or dimension. And there are headlines here. Brexit was about slashing public services, Rees-Mogg admits. And Liz Truss's dad said to be appalled by his daughter's policies. These are all Telegraph pieces. And this brilliant response to Theresa May's Brexit letter is going viral. Now, what is this brilliant response? All the all the last four so-called leaders of the Conservative Party in the UK have been shit and worse. Now, we are not going to read the whole thing, just a bit from the London Economics. It's not the Telegraph, it's a London Economic item. There is no denying that Theresa May's letter appealing for the nation to unite around her Brexit deal has not had the response she had hoped for. But perhaps the best reply we have seen so far has come from comic, presenter, and veteran folk singer Mike Harding. The Prime Minister's letter on Saturday called for whatever. They're not. I'm going to read that one now. Not going to read that one. Just going back to Sylvie Barman, there is a quote from her on the Times in the 27th of February 2021, piece by Charles Bremner. She strikes a wistful note in describing her shock over the Brexit vote. The ambassador left London the year after the referendum to become ambassador to Moscow, her last post before compulsory retirement last year. When I arrived in Britain, I had the impression of a country firmly attached to its modernity with a flourishing economy. I was struck by the charm and all the new buildings and the mixture of old England with the modern. I lived in New York in the 90s, but I felt London had become the new world city, more exciting than New York, she says. French leaders, including a young Emmanuel Macron, look to London for tips on success and quality of life. Britain has always fascinated the French. It has that side that is totally exotic. It needs explaining. Despite our close contacts with the British intellectual and artistic world, as well as the politicians, the Brexit vote came as a shock. No one saw it coming, including the Brexiteers who always told me, it's never going to happen. We will never have the courage to leave. Johnson was one of those predicting a Remain vote, she says. He was saying it's not going to happen. That wasn't his goal. I think his main aim was to position himself with the hope of replacing Cameron. After the vote, Britain felt sour, she says. The anger and the hostility that had been under the surface was suddenly legitimized. The Brexit vote was the first eruption of an alarming global trend of populist rejection of elites and their devotion to charismatic manipulators. She says Johnson as a cultivated person of Donald Trump. No, sorry. She sees Johnson as a cultivated version of Donald Trump and President Bolsonaro of Brazil. Johnson and his Brexiteers got away with a fantasy version of Britain and the European Union, she writes, by feeding them false anxiety inducing information about the European Union and immigrants. The populists cleverly manipulated the people. Her words closely echo Macron's thoughts on the matter. Britain has changed, she told me. You feel all these little things you didn't feel before. The cliche was that the British were very open, very indifferent about whether you belonged to one religion or another. We had the impression it was a country that was more open than ours, more free, more optimistic. It's different now. Cameron submitted into the disaster by failing to make any positive argument for the EU membership, she says. He was always saying we will be safer and stronger and better off without explaining why. The other side said, take back control, and people got the impression that they would never recover something. They would recover something. That is the thing. France offered to help to boost the argument, but Cameron refused every time, she says. So, this is a Remain vote would have swung Britain the other way, she believes. The people who were racist and aggressive would have shut up. They were like that already, but they were legitimized by the success of Brexit. Now that needs repeating, doesn't it? The people who were racist and aggressive would have shut up. They were like that already, but they were legitimized by the success of Brexit. And that's what happened in the United States, she says. If Trump hadn't been elected every time, everything that appeared might not have happened, like the Gilets Jaunes in France, she added. Speaking of the French anti government grassroots revolt, we didn't see them coming because the signals were too weak. If Marine Le Pen, Rally leader, is elected, it would be legitimized. It would legitimize. It would legitimate. It would legitimate a form of xenophobia. Barman says Britain is a victim of its delusions. Now remember that delusion? That is for so in the Quran. The Satan would delude his followers. And these are the followers who are leading. And these are the deluded ones that are leading. Barman says Britain is a victim of its delusions about an imagined past and its belief that it won the war single handedly without the sacrifice of 22 million Russians and the US might. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. That is Sylvie Berman's summary. The partisans of Brexit are reciting a history in which the UK is never defeated, never invaded. The corollary of an English saving Europe is a detestation of Germany and contempt for cowardice. The term is often used for those who allowed themselves to be occupied, not to mention collaborators, she writes. While Britain had among the finest universities in the world, well, that is something I would question, absolutely question. The popular press, led by the Daily Mail, she says, helped the country to imagine it was living in a world of Dad's Army and Downton Abbey. Its slogan, she suggests, laughing, should be Beatles' lyric, I believe in yesterday. With the world quickly resolving into three poles of economic and military power, the US, the European Union, and China, Britain has doomed itself to unappetizing choices, she says. By removing itself from a union that is a big player and by putting up backs of its former partners, Britain has wielded together a continent that it has throughout history worked to divide. London will have succeeded in bringing together a continental bloc of 27 countries. This was the famous blockade organized by Napoleon and which England so feared. China is the big global challenge, she says, and Britain has downgraded its influence. In the book, she asks, how has this country, whose influence had been decisive in Brussels, which insolently rolled out the red carpet for French entrepreneurs, and which Xi Jinping had elected in October 2015 as the gateway to Europe, undertaken to scuttle itself? That is where the scuttle comes in. Fuck itself up. That is what it is, scuttle itself. Britain now faces few options. It can become an American state dependent on Uncle Sam, or it can attach itself to the Union, enjoying none of the advantages of membership, she says. President Biden believes Brexit is a historic error and is not keen on close ties with Johnson's Britain, she writes. Joe Biden has a very negative view of Boris Johnson, who he calls a physical and emotional clone of Donald Trump. Berman, who wrote a book on China after her years as ambassador, has been accused by some of indulging in undemocratic regime. Indulging in undemocratic regime. She responds, democracies are in crisis. There was Brexit, Trump, the Gilets Jaunes. The Chinese have stopped listening to Western criticism. They say, we don't need you anymore. I don't think the Chinese want us to have their system. What they want is that we leave them in peace. Barman, who has not been married and has no children, was born in the Jura mountain region, the daughter of lawyers. One of her grandmothers was Russian. She regrets that French rules forced her to give up diplomatic work. I adored the job, getting to know people, writers, artists, the politicians. She counts the writers Julian Burns and Jonathan Coe as friends. Brexit is already hurting the UK, she says. Since January 1, it's true they have been better than us over the vaccines. She had COVID 19 last March, but the rest is rather difficult. Amsterdam has overtaken London for stock trading. The fishermen are absolutely furious and say, we have been lied to. She is not too pessimistic about Britain, however. The British are not people who cry over spilt milk. They will bounce back because they're dynamic while having the talent. Sylvie Agnes Berman, born October 19th, 1953, is Salins-les-Bains, France. In Salins-les-Bains, France. Education history degree from the Paris Sorbonne University, graduate of the French Institute of Oriental Languages and Civilizations, the French Institute of Political Studies, and of the Beijing Language Institute. She's a linguist, as I said. She started out at the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1979, where she later headed its Directorate for the United Nations, etc., etc. Goodbye, Britannia. We shall read Sylvie Barman's book in due course, not necessarily in this edition. So, where are we now? In terms of the updates. We shall be talking about the updates on Tower Hamlets and what the crooks are up to in Tower Hamlets. Are they going to do anything different for this missing girl? Let's check. This is a missing girl, Anissa Shah, also known as Annie or Daniela, has been missing since October the 7th. So it happened in Newham. How come that they haven't found this girl yet? And how did she run away? Because she was supposed to be placed by social workers or social services to live away from her mom. What went wrong? Now, Taram leads to consultant bringing housing services back in house. Now, this is a lying statement by Lutfur Rahman, who is a liar on housing. Complete and utter liar. Whoever wrote this lying script did so to lie and let the liar lie. He says, we are proud of the work undertaken by Tar Hamlets Homes over the past 14 years. Lutfur Rahman will regret all of this statement. Absolutely untruthful, corrupt, and inaccurate and stupid. Tar Hamlets Homes has been a corrupt criminal operation for the last 14 years, as has been the rest of the council's operation. So Lutfur Rahman would regret this. He lied. So Imran Khan wins all the seats except one in the National Assembly by elections that he contested, of course. So we shall stop at this time, 1 hour, 20 minutes. And the time is 08:11 local time, Britain, 07:11, 07:12 now, GMT, on Monday the 17th of October 2022.